G'day Eagles fans, welcome back to True Eagle. In today's video, I am going to have a crack at our best 23 following the recent trade period. Obviously, we've got a few new names to consider. I'm going to go through our best 23 and I'm also going to look at what our WAFL team would look like with just AFL listed players. Now, the dust has settled on the trade period, so it's time to anticipate what our team might look like next year. Furthermore, I've woken up to the news of 3 delistings from the Eagles list, which we can also cover off in this video. So to start, Jai Culley, Alex Witherden, and Kobe Bergiel were all delisted this year, in addition to the ones we made a little while ago. These guys obviously were held on through the trade period and have now been thanked for their service. So that also leaves Rotham and Luke Edwards as 2 players who are still in limbo. We don't know if they're getting contracts, so we'll speak about them shortly. But on the delisted 3 players, Culley, Witherden, and Bergiel. None of these are massive surprises, although it probably didn't quite go the way I expected. So Culley was reported to be offered a 1-year deal some time back, and somehow that situation has changed. Now, was the initial report wrong? It's entirely possible. But further to that as well, we probably didn't anticipate walking away from the trade period with Matt Owies, so that probably had some implications. If I had to guess who the next cab off the rank to get a contract was, I would have said Jai Culley. He's a little unlucky. In my opinion, I think he's got some really nice AFL traits, but he's kind of caught between 2 positions. So he can win clearances as a midfielder. He's a good, strong overhead mark. His kicking is above average without being elite, but as a midfielder, he's probably a little slow, and I think that might have been what the assessment here of Jai Culley was. Now, we also moved him to the forward line this year, and he had some success in a Port Adelaide game where he kicked 4 goals and got a Rising Star nomination. But as far as like medium-sized forwards go, we've got depth in that area, and he was probably the least skilled out of all of them. I do think he could make it as an AFL player. I could see him going somewhere else and having some success. And to be honest, I'm a little sad. You know, I remember 2022 when we picked him up in the mid-season draft, he was like the one midfielder we could feel excited about. Chesser had just done his ankle. We hadn't drafted Jinby or Hewitt yet, so we kind of latched onto Culley, and he had a good start to his career. So I'm a little sad to see him go, but I do kind of understand why. And we've kind of also got to consider list positions, right? Witherden, I actually thought he was more likely to survive than Rotham, because over the last couple of years, he's played a lot of football and he is, you know, a mature head, shows good leadership, understands the game pretty well, but probably just a little bit attribute deficient. That is a really politically correct way of saying it. Look, I think when it comes down to it, Witherden had some good traits. You know, intercept marking was solid without being elite, and he was a good kick of the footy, although he did have some brain fades. But ultimately, as a defender, he wasn't quite good enough, really, one-on-one to really justify his position as a specialist rebounding defender who really only used the ball by foot. There was no run and carry. He's like Shannon Hearn, but Shannon Hearn was an amazing defender. So Witherden was a little bit unlucky there, and Rotham survived. So Rotham may still get a contract. It was reported that, you know, he might go to Essendon. And then I saw, I think it was Ryan Daniels tweeted today, he's likely to stay at West Coast. And that implies he's getting a contract, which I didn't think was going to be the case. Now, what's different between Rotham and Witherden? I'd say Witherden's been better of the 2 performed over the last couple of years, but Rotham actually has probably some more AFL traits in the sense that he's also a decent kick without being great, and he's quick. He's quite a good athlete. So of the 2, maybe Rotham does have more potential to thrive under a new coach and a new system. Maybe Rotham was just used incorrectly. Now, don't get me wrong. I probably would have delisted both if it was up to me. However, in the backdrop of all this, we've also got a bit of a shortage of depth in medium to tall or third tall defenders on our list. So Rotham and Witherden leaving probably would have left us a bit exposed. So we've decided to play it safe, keep one, although it's not confirmed yet. He hasn't received a contract. As for Bergiel, I talked him up in this preseason. I was pretty optimistic about what we could see from him. He really does have AFL traits. He's really quick and a really good ball user, and has shown an ability to play in multiple positions on the ground. It's just that this year, in addition to some hamstring issues, he really just didn't take his opportunity to even get close to the team. His WAFL performances, he couldn't find the ball a lot. So he falls by the wayside after just 2 years on our list, despite being a 2nd round selection. So it was a bit of an odd selection at the time. As someone who follows the draft, I remember thinking, oh, we kind of reached a little bit to get Bergiel, but geez, highlights package is nice. And then ultimately it's kind of resulted in the delisting. Now, he has been told apparently that we're open to signing him up as an SSP player after the trade period and after the draft, late next summer, like before the preseason. We can still sign him as a top-up. I'd imagine this is contingent on how the draft goes. You know, we've got 3 meaningful selections as it currently stands. So if we trade into the first round, like I'm hoping, then someone like a Bergiel is almost certainly not going to get a spot. But if the draft doesn't go the way we want, we may decide to chuck him back on the list at the start of next year. All right, so that's that for the delistings and how much impact it has on the best 22. Probably not, but it does have impact on the WAFL 22, which I'll show you. So I'll get up our best 22 or 23 as I currently see it. So in green, you have players that are new to the list. Now, I just want to say there's a few things I don't like about my own best 23 here. And that is the complete absence of a couple of youngsters that I really want to see in the team. And I really don't like that I haven't got them in the team, but I'll elaborate on that. I'm talking about Tyrell Dewar and Harvey Johnston. But let's just start with the strongest 23 that I could assemble, bearing in mind sometimes you've got to consider list balance or team balance in this as well. So we'll start with the back line. Hoff picks himself, as does Ruben Ginbey, Duggan McGovern, and probably Harry Edwards at this point, given he is probably our second best key defender now. So if we start with the key defensive stocks, you'll see I've got Marek in there as well. I would like to see him train with the backs this year. I do think, maybe he is a natural forward. And my belief with players who are multi-talented, I do think that if you can get a forward who can play as a forward well, that is a really rare skill in comparison to a running defender. It's just that we really don't need Marek. Could it be a wingman? I am a little unsure if that's the best use of his talents or the best way to develop him if he's playing in a team where our wingmen aren't getting the ball. Now, we do have a new coach and that could all be different. So I'm intrigued to see what happens with Marek, but I think it would be cool to see him as a running and spoiling, intercept marking, rebounding defender. I don't really know how much running carry he's got. He doesn't use it much in games, but he's quite tall. He's 196. He's starting to fill out. He could take a third tall forward, but also be there primarily to intercept, sort of like a Josh Battle. And with his ball use there, he is the best ball user in that back six and possibly the team. So I do have Duggan moving back into this back line. Brady Hoff is self-explanatory, and Ruben Ginbey, again, I think ended the team as a really well-performed defender. I think he did well. So what does that backline lack? Well, probably a stronger 1-2 punch in terms of key defenders. Harry Edwards could really make a name for himself this year. I think he's got talent, but obviously he's far from proven. McGovern was the best key defender in the league this year, so that one speaks for itself. So what do we think of the mix there? There's pace, really. I mean, Hoff is quick, but I imagine he's probably playing more lockdown. Duggan has a bit of pace. Ruben Ginbey is genuinely quick. But what about foot skills? You got Marek, he uses the ball well, as does McGovern for a big guy. Ginbey and Duggan probably both fall under the category of can be really good kicks, but sometimes their radar can be off. I mean, they're technically proficient. The ball moves at a nice trajectory. They can be erratic. Hoff is a tidy ball user, but doesn't really use his foot skills in an aggressive manner. Like I said, a little bit more defensively oriented. So we've got a little bit of rebound and speed there. And the ball use from Marek is the strong suit there. However, we could really use someone like a Bashar Julio, one of those top line defenders who can run and carry and use the ball well. Lewis Jetta is our own example of that. But that might be the best mix we have. So let's move to the midfield here. I've got Baker on the wing, Harley Reid, Yo Kelly in the guts, and Jack Hutchinson on the other wing. And look, I've picked Bailey Williams over Matt Flynn. I don't really care who they pick for round one. I think both, probably weren't great this year for different reasons. Matthew Flynn got injured, I realised that. But Bailey at least has been better at AFL level before, so I went with him. But it could be Matt Flynn. I do prefer we don't go with both because I don't think we need to go that tall personally. But on the midfield, Reid, Yo and Kelly speak for themselves. And I tell you what, I actually got a little bit excited writing Harley Reid's name in the middle there. We're a few weeks or months removed from last seeing him play for us, but I just really re-engaged with the excitement of having him on our team. Baker on a wing, look, he might play backward of centre, or he could play in the guts. He could be anything, it's unclear. He could be a forward flanker for all I know, but he can play on the wing. And Hutchinson as well looked pretty good at stoppages in that last game at Geelong, but he can play on the wing as well. So in terms of rotations there, I'd say all of Baker and Hutchinson, Ginbey and Duggan can rotate through various positions and play on ball. So there is some versatility there, some flexibility with this team. Everyone's quick there, really. Hutchinson and Baker are both very quick, as is Harley, as you should remember. Yo's still quick, even if he's more inside, and Kelly can have a bit of a burst pace as well. So the midfield's quick. It relies a lot again on Yo, I think. Yo having a good year in the clearances. If you look down at the bench, I've also got Jack Graham there. His best utility to us, I think, is probably as the rotation for Yo. If Yo is that number one, first hands on the ball in a clearance situation kind of guy, I feel like when Yo was off the field, we really did lose a lot in the clearance stakes, and Reed still needs some support. So having Reed and Kelly as the more receiver types in that scenario. Graham comes in and he can win clearances, absolutely. He's not the best ball user, but he gets the ball out. So I think that will be the support Jack Graham offers here. So the midfield gets a little bit deeper, and hopefully Yo can recapture some of his 2023 form. He's going to be 31 next season for most of it anyway. So let's move to the forward line here. So I've gone Liam Ryan, Oscar Allen, Elijah Hewitt, then Matt Owies, Jake Waterman, and Noah Long. So I do need to reference, I have put Jamie Cripps on the bench here. So this was the first one that gave me some consternation, as it were. I wanted to put Dewar in here, but I think the blend of talents here, Jamie Cripps, I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm going to assume that West Coast see Matt Owies as best 22, and I think that he'll start there, so I just couldn't leave him out. And he is, as a goal kicker, more proven than, say, I've got Long, Hewitt, and Ryan there. Ryan, I imagine, plays high half forward. I even considered him throwing him in the back line, and we can do that through stages of this year. But he'll be a forward mid. And the same thing with Hewitt. He's not a proven goal kicker. I would like to see him be exposed to the midfield more next year. But coming off, a long injury layoff, there's some risk there. So we start him as an impact forward who rotates through there. But obviously he's not going to kick 30 goals. Noah Long, I love the kid, doesn't kick a lot of goals. So Owies does actually add some potency there. Jamie Cripps is in there as a leader. Again, you could flip him out for Tyrell Dewar. Absolutely. But defensive running and leadership on field is what Cripps brings. And I do wonder if the mix without him is not balanced enough. So the thing with someone like a Dewar, we know that this 22 or 23 is idealistic, and we're going to have an injury or two to consider by round one. So I hope that Dewar and Johnston are the first cabs off the rank. But this is the way I've selected this current team. So Allen and Waterman and Jack Williams there as the rotating ruck forward. We know the talls are good. There's no real issue there. That's the way I've selected it. And I've also selected Tom Cole as our bench defender. Now, Jaden Hunt, I made the sub. That's also one I felt uncomfortable with, but I wouldn't put him on the wing ahead of those other options. And then as a defender, depends how you rate him as a defender. I think, to be honest, he's been a better player for us than Tom Cole lately. But Cole is actually a little bit more defensively oriented than Jaden Hunt. So I could switch those around, but then if you put Cole as the sub, you might as well make that a midfielder, I reckon, rather than a running defender, because Cole is a bit more defensively minded. So that was the way I balanced out the team. Tom Cole is a more genuine defender, and Jaden Hunt's unlucky there. But I don't think that's probably selling Jaden Hunt a little bit short. He didn't have a great year, so that one was iffy for me. But all in all, I've picked a pretty experienced team, and I would like to see more youth through that side as the year wears on. Look, to be honest, you look at that team, and I don't think it's that bad. It shouldn't be that far behind the rest of the competition. I don't know what I'll predict us to be next year. The thing is, when you turn over the page and I'll get the next team up, the depth is kind of horrid. There's no doubt about that. But I think if you were someone who thought Simo was underperforming and needed to be sacked, then you must sort of to some extent think this team is capable of more. And I look at that team, and I don't think it's bad. It's quick, there's some skill, it can be inconsistent, particularly with contested footy for sure, but the forward line has a decent potency. We've got midfield rotations everywhere. I imagine Hewitt and Ryan still rotate through the midfield. There's still 8 midfield rotations there. So overall, I think that's a good competitive team, to be honest. And it does rely on Marek playing in the back line. All right, let's look over to this second page. So in red, I've got players without contracts currently, and question marks are literally just players. We don't have enough players at the moment to fill out the team because obviously the draft hasn't happened yet. Josh Rotham is the third tall defender, or actually fourth tall defender there, with Jamison, Barnett, and Bazzo. So the thing with those key backs is that 2 of them are converted rucks, and Jamison has been injured a lot, and Rhett Bazzo's had his obstacles. I think Bazzo is a safe bet personally on talent. But Barnett and Jamison are questionable, so I really do want to draft a key defender this year, maybe with pick 26. Like if we don't trade in, let's say 12, spend it on a midfielder or whatever, a key back at 26 in this year's draft could be a good go, I reckon. Harvey Johnston, I've got him running off half back. Again, in time, he could be a wingman, he could be a half forward, high half forward. I'm not too sure. But towards the end of the year, we did see him running off half back, and I think with his speed and skill, I mean, you could argue he could be in the team instead of Tom Cole, but I chose Tom Cole because he's a bit more of a defender. Johnston is not a defender yet. He needs to bulk up. He hasn't played a lot of defense before. He'd be more of that running defender, but I do want to see him in the team. I really do. Same thing with Tyrell Dewar, who I've picked at half forward there. The midfield's not great. I've got Luke Edwards in red here. I don't know what's happening with Luke. I do suspect that he probably would have been delisted, but we are treating him with respect around his contract because of his concussion. And if he has some sort of concussion-related retirement, I wonder if we're just holding fire before we make a delisting as such. And the club will, I'm sure, support him post his career if that is the way it's going. But it is entirely possible. Like I'm speculating that it is possible we keep him. And I don't know if I fully agree with that decision in terms of football. If it's a football decision, I'm not sure. But then you look at this midfield. You got Matthew Flynn. He should play well in the WAFL, you'd think. He could start in our best 23, who knows. But then you got Clay Hall, Campbell Chesser, and Dom Sheed. Dom Sheed's foot is not in good shape from what I've heard. And I hope he gets fit for his own sake. But, I'd imagine he starts next year, round 1 in the WAFL, if his foot's okay. Clay Hall looks like a likely type, but I think clearly starts outside the best 23 if everyone is fit. And I've got Campbell Chesser in the midfield there, but it is deficient. There needs to be more midfielders added to this list. It would have been really nice to add one with pick 3 or pick 6. Like I'm not going to say I wish we had pick 3. I thought we would trade it anyway. But that is the cost we've given up, is really adding to this midfield, which really does need some help, in my opinion. Forward line is decent in terms of, if you're looking at it as a WAFL team, a lot of these guys have played AFL. So Dewar, great talent. Want to see him play 15, 20 games next year. And with injury, that will become possible. As it currently stands, though, unless we tell Jamie Cripps you're starting in the WAFL, and maybe that happens at round 4, I don't know. But as it currently stands, Dewar probably starts the year in the WAFL. Is that the worst thing in the world? No, but I mean, he and Johnston are probably at least one more preseason each. So in addition to this coming up one, to really be ready for AFL, but it would be nice to see some young talent playing in the team that I think is AFL standard. Brockman in there, obviously he's got some work to do. I think getting Owies in, same thing with Petruccelli, it makes their jobs really tough to retain a spot. Now I think Brockman might have two more years left on his contract. Petruccelli at the end of this year will be out of contract, or the end of 25. So they're in danger. But in terms of depth, this is arguably the strongest part of this WAFL team is their forward line. Locke Rawlinson was re-signed on a 1-year contract. Small forward, played 1 game as sub. So we'll see. Then on the bench there, you've got pick 12, 26, and Malachi Champion. We might not end up with Malachi, but those are the 3, bench options there. So I really do want to get back into this year's draft. What does pick 12 look like? I'll do a whole video on that. But, 3 names that come to mind right now. Bowen, of course. I don't know if he's going to be available. I would say the same thing about Travalia. Not sure if he's available. And then there's Xavier Lindsay. So all 3 of those players are players that I do like. And at pick 12 would be good value. And would all probably start defense first and then move into the midfield throughout their career. So they could, in theory, they could start in the AFL team, depending on how good they are, how ready they are. But that probably plugs a bit of a gap. So I do like Xavier Lindsay as well. He may be the 3rd ranked out of those 3 talents, but if he's available at 12, I could see him running off half-back in either of these teams and eventually becoming a midfielder. But that is mapping out our depth at the moment. So the question marks there are obviously halfback and the other wing. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to draft a halfback flanker and a wing. We have 2 bites of the apple in this year's draft. I was really hoping we'd take 4 or 5 good selections. I think I did an idealistic trade period that had us get 5 in the top 27. That's probably a bit overambitious. It looks a bit silly now, but we don't have a lot of avenues to really improve our depth with 2 selections, or 3 if you want to include Malachi there. So I say with 12, we just go best available talent, provided they're a midfielder or have midfielder potential. If 26 is used on a tall defender, I think that is good, but unfortunately our options for adding talent any other way are a little bit tied up right now. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comments what you think of those teams. Like I said, I know the thing that I didn't like about this team is they don't have Dewar or Johnston. I wish I'd crammed them in, but I think that team could be competitive next year. And, hopefully we start to close the gap between us and the next worst side, which is about 4 or 5 wins ahead of us or something like that. So let me know in the comments what you think. What will you do differently? And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.